Leonidas and the Battle of Thermopylae. Leonidas was the king of Sparta from 490 BCE until his death at Thermopylae in 480 BCE. He was a valiant leader with a legacy that we will never forget. Leonidas was the son of Anaxandridas I, who had a son named Cleomenes that was to become king, but was killed in violent and mysterious circumstances in 490 BCE. Leonidas went through the harsh training of Spartans. He was lucky because he almost failed the requirements of being a Spartan and would have been left in the woods for almost a week to see if he would survive. Luckily, the elders decided that he should live. The training of the Spartans started when the chosen boys were very young. Some examples of this training include whacking fellow Spartans with sticks, fist fighting, and breaking the rules. As they got older, the training got harder. They were strapped to pillars and whipped until they bled. Their families would stand and watch, yelling, telling their children not to fall. When the Spartans were coming of age, they would sneak out and kill helot slaves. If they could do this without being caught, they were considered men. Spartans were taught to fight among themselves to determine the strongest of their group. Young Spartans were taught to use a hoplite spear and sword and a battle stance called a phalanx. The phalanx is a tight rectangle of soldiers, each with their own shields. The soldiers in front would stand, stabbing the oncoming enemy with their spears through the gaps in their shields. The second row would do the same, the only difference being they would stab from the top.
Leonidas' most famous battle was the Battle of Thermopylae. It took place in 480 BCE in Thermopylae Pass. Thermopylae Pass was a narrow strip of land on the Millennium Gulf. The Battle of Thermopylae was fought between the Persians and the Greeks. The Persians attacked the Greeks once before. The battle was known as the Battle of Marathon. The Battle of Marathon was fought on the coast of Greece. The main heroes in the battle were the Athenians. The Persians attacked the Marathon because the Greeks assisted in one of Persia's city-states, Ionia, in a revolution. The Persians wanted to burn Athens, the home of Greek government, to the ground after their humiliating loss at Marathon. King Xerxes of Persia led the great Persian army to Thermopylae. The Persian army had about 300,000 men at its ranks, while the Greek army only had about 8,000. Leonidas chose Thermopylae Pass because it gave him an advantage over the Persians. Even though the Persian army was so big and the Greek army so small, Thermopylae Pass was very narrow, making it hard for the Persian army to unleash their full power. This worried the Persians, but they had a secret weapon. The Persians possessed a powerful artillery and a very powerful navy with about 1,000 ships, while the Greeks had nothing.
The Greeks and the Spartans would have lost the battle earlier on if an experienced military leader and politician named Themistocles had stepped in. If Themistocles hadn't tricked the Greek government into giving him a navy, there was no hope in Thermopylae at all. Though the navy Themistocles had acquired had only 200 ships in it, he was a great leader and he had to make do with what he had. Themistocles used the navy to block the Persians from infiltrating the area of water around Thermopylae. If the Persians had passed through these waters without detection, the battle would have been lost. Leonidas waited for the Persians to attack first. His battle strategy used the phalanx. The phalanx was, as you may recall, a tight rectangle of soldiers, each with their own bronze shields, hoplite spears, and swords. They only used the sword when they lost their spear, because the phalanx depended on the spears and the shields. The Battle of Thermopylae was 3 days long, though the Greeks held off the Persians for 7. The Persians started the battle with a volley of 10,000 arrows from their best archers. The Spartans, however, were not fazed by this and stood battle ready.
The Persian army then sent their ground forces towards the Spartans, but they were unable to unleash all of their men upon them. Instead, they sent them wave after wave of Persian warriors. The Spartans held strong. They cheered after they killed waves of Persians to keep everyone motivated and to do well and to intimidate the enemy. This carried on for 2 days with only little breaks at night. But on the third day, a Greek farmhand betrayed them. He told the Persians of a pass in between the mountains that would lead to the Spartans. The Spartans had covered this pass, but the warriors who stood there retreated to their home city in fear it would be attacked. The Persians sent a portion of their men to flank around. The Greek messenger brought the news to Leonidas. Leonidas made the bold decision to let almost all the Greeks fall back to Athens. The next attack on the Spartans was devastating, for they had enemy on both sides attacking, weakening the forces on both sides. The Persians decided that they would unleash their archers upon them, and the sky was black with arrows. The Spartans had many losses, and Leonidas was killed in the arrow fire. The few remaining Spartans tried to defend Leonidas' body but were unsuccessful, and all the Spartans and Greeks died. But their efforts were not in vain. Leonidas knew he would lose the battle, and by sending the Greeks back to Athens, he saved the city.
Leonidas had lots of leadership and quite a big legacy. He was one of the most well-known kings of Sparta and one of the best they had. He left a big legacy that is shown in books, movies, and documentaries. He showed leadership in the Battle of Thermopylae and also in regular Spartan life. While for most of his life, Leonidas worked and trained as a Spartan soldier, Leonidas would eventually become king. If someone else were in his place, they would have cracked under the pressure. Leonidas was brought up as a face in the crowd, but he died a hero. The Battle of Thermopylae was an amazing battle, and even though it was lost, the fearlessness and determination in that battle is incomparable to any other battle in the history of the world. This battle's legacy has inspired many books and movies to be written. Leonidas set an even more tantalizing legacy on the world. He showed that no matter where you were born, when you lived, or what you look like, you could achieve greatness.